Welcome everyone to today's Midnight 6.6 training session. In today's session, we'll be going over the admin setup in Midnight. This is part 1 of 15 training videos that will cover the core mechanics of Midnight functionality. And as we proceed through, we'll have a better understanding of both today's topic, the admin setup, as well as the many other features that Midnight has to offer based on their respective modules. Today we'll be spending most of our time in the admin menu. Therefore, if you do not have admin privileges and credentials for your own site, you may find a little bit of this either too foreign or difficult to access. That said, if you do need to figure out how to populate certain areas of your Midnight or set up some general or global features, this will help you understand where those features are coming from and possibly why they've been set up the way they have been on your site. In order to access your admin menu, first, after logging in, you'll need to click the gear button here in the upper right. In here, we'll start by taking a look at the primary admin menu feature that covers the majority of the basic operations that you may be seeing, the global settings. The global settings menu features choices for many different modules. To start, you'll be brought into the company settings area. In here, this is where you'll enter your information about your company that will print out on reports like invoices and estimates. You can also attach a report logo, which is a logo that prints on many of your reports, again, such as your estimates and invoices. The logo will be dynamically sized for you when it's displayed on reports, although we do suggest that for proper scaling, you try to upload your logo within the confines of at least 115 pixels in height. Additionally, if you follow the other guidelines here for the file size and for the file type, knowing that other types like PDF images will not be displayed on your report. You also have a system logo. This system logo is what you'll see in the upper corner of whatever website it is that you log in. It's also referenced on our dynamic job board. Additionally, if you have customers that utilize the customer portal, the logo will appear on their side as well, letting them know who they're accessing the portal for. The system logo and report logo both utilize the same guidelines, and if you plan on using the same one for each, do be aware that even though you're uploading them onto a white background here, if your logo has white text, then you're printing on a dark surface, or you're looking at an image with a dark background, it will still appear. The company itself can be created by selecting under this company dropdown your company choice, or you can select add company to add a new one. Many of our Midnight users will only ever have one company, but if you are an organization that's made up of multiple companies, you may need to set up more than one of these. After you've set up your company, you'll need to make sure that you have a default. This default is as simple as making sure the checkbox is checked here and then hitting the save button in the upper right. The information that you see for your company includes the company's name, some other information which is not quite as relevant towards other areas of the system at the moment, but maybe in your case, such as your company's code, the URL to your company, the tax jurisdiction default, which can be handled through this estimates and orders list, and we'll take a look at this in a few minutes. The parent company, which would only be applicable if you have more than one company in your account and one default. And then notably the address information, such as the address lines 1, 2, and 3, city, state, and zip. They will appear on your documentation, such as your estimates, and invoice reports as a return address. That way, as you're preparing to send out documentation, the documents are populated with the correct info based on the company of choice. The country here, when selected, has a list it can populate, and we here at the Midnight side can control what this list has. The main phone number and email, again, are information pieces that will appear on your documentation. And for this screen, lastly, on the right, you see some features that determine how Midnight will operate in certain areas. From top to bottom here, of course, we have our default company, which we've gone over. We also have our accounting integration. If you plan on using Midnight to export orders, check information such as postage payment and purchase order info out into an accounting program like QuickBooks, you can select that program here by clicking this blue button. Selecting your accounting program of choice from this list, and then filling out any relevant information related to your accounting program based on the one that you select. If you have an accounting program that is not listed in here that you intend on using, contact someone on our support team and we'll do what we can to help you get that feature built. Other features in here include the edit order number checkbox. When this is checked, then you have a security credential that can allow users to change the order number on jobs. Having this checked does not mean that all users can do this by default. It just means that the option is available. There are these 3 auto deduct inventory checkboxes. The first 2 account for inventory auto deducting itself from an order based on the application of a close date or an actual drop date, which in our system is also called the ship date. Alternatively, you have the version checkbox, which allows you to manually deduct all inventory from an order's version by entering the inventory tab of that version and hitting the deduct button. This will be explained more in detail in future training sessions, but in Midnight, orders are considered to be single version orders unless they have multiple versions. And versions are effectively jobs within jobs, allowing you to break out billing and production info in separate methods. Related to inventory, you have the lot tracking system. The checkbox here will determine how your inventory is handled for deduction purposes by either first in, first out, last in, first out, by cost, or if you have lot tracking disabled, then it will simply be deducted based on the time in which it was added to the system, not necessarily related to the date in which it was logged as being received. The other tabs that we see in here will be discussed largely during their respective training sessions, such as the estimates and orders, PO and inventory tab. One thing I'd like to go over here is that the reports module, outgoing reports, are controlled in some degree for default email signature and default VCC for this menu. If you're a new user, you'll want to make sure that you have a default VCC set up to an address that points to somewhere on one of your email servers. Even though Midnight can log outgoing emails and documents that have gone with them, is not a supplement for an emailing program like Microsoft Outlook or Mozilla Thunderbird. Doing this will make sure that emails that are sent out of Midnight both A, have successfully been sent, and B, will include a list of all recipients, metadata, etc., all of that which cannot be viewed in Midnight. If you have not yet already created one, we strongly suggest you do so, making sure one of these is set up for yourself. The system prompts to save when navigating away from the page without saving checkbox. When checked, it effectively says if you're leaving a page before hitting save, generate a pop-up that asks, are you sure you want to leave? And finally, the password rule. In here, a password rule can be adjusted so that way there's a minimum amount of characters required for a password, or there's a certain frequency in which passwords need to be updated. These can be viewed in here. The team at our side can update whatever these credential criteria are. If you need to reach out to us, let us know at our support email, and we'll make these changes as necessary. The last feature, which is not a commonly used feature, is under the company settings. These two checkboxes for display total services and tax on estimates and orders, and display CPM on estimates and orders. By default, these will be turned on for you. These allow you to see what the prices are for your different areas of estimate and order level information. If you need to hide these, then you make it so that way numbers can only be seen from a document such as an invoice, although the individual service prices and taxes can still be seen on the estimate and order level. So if you're hiding it, then you need to make sure that you're not allowing people to access those particular screens at all if you do not want them to see info. And the other feature in here, the site token. The site token will be populated if you have integration with Midnight's API. If you're unfamiliar with API, it's a method of communication that allows programs to send and receive information from each other in a more simplified language that can be sort of universally built depending on whatever it is you're working with. If you're not utilizing the API is not your responsibility at your organization, or you're not even sure if you're going to be picking it up, then don't worry too much about this. It's something that our users here create for you, so that way it's more like a secondary security key for data entry only. And there's a few other areas in our admin menu that are required in order for you as a Midnight user to do what you need to do. In order to create your employee profiles, you'll first need departments. Departments are just classifications in which you can organize and set your employees to. You can edit ones that exist in here by checking the pencil button, modifying the name, and if you need to deactivate it, unchecking the checkbox under the active column. You can then click Save and Complete. Additionally, you have a search filter here at the top, which allows you to, when entering data, filter out information based on what you type in. Most of our screens in the admin menu that utilize this type of view also have an active column in which you can view active or inactive options by changing the check to unchecked. You can click the Clear Filters button here to remove all search filters. And finally, if you need to add new options, you can fill them out in this bottom gray row. Make sure that the active checkbox is checked, so that way when you save it, it actually does commit itself to the screen and can be made immediately accessible depending on where you're applying it. The other thing required on employees is a shift. Shifts interact with not only the employee profile, but also job costing information. You can see your available shifts by selecting from this drop-down the first shift, which will appear on your site by default. This will include just a very brief description of a shift starting and ending time, as well as include a break time. Break times, just like departments, can be added in through this bottom gray row. And you can set a start time and stop time for your break, so that way there's a calculation of minutes for an employee as they log a break through our shop floor data collection system. If you do not use that, you'll still need to set up a shift, although a break will not be necessary. And finally, you can have multiple breaks assigned to a shift, for instance, 15-minute breaks, 30-minute breaks, and hour breaks. As you add them, you can again edit them by checking this here, or you can delete them by hitting the red X button. So be sure to select the green submit in order to commit your operation changes, otherwise what you just done will not be saved. The third thing that's more or less required for an employee is their security role. You can see the roles themselves by expanding the security submenu and going to create role. Getting a view of all the current security roles that are active or inactive on your site. While these you can rename, we do suggest being careful with them, as certain roles like administrator, data collection, and external user are very specifically built. Others like customer service or CSR, sales, etc., they can be tailored as you see fit. After creating the role itself, or just seeing what we have available, you'll also want to go into the Create Role Right screen. In here, you can select your security role of choice and give security privileges to a security role, either on the module level, such as banning a user from being able to access or make changes in the inventory module, restricting certain pages within a module, such as within the inventory page, restricting users to being able to log receipts, or even lock down specific fields, such as preventing a user from entering an order and hitting the delete button within it. After you've made changes to your security role of choice, be sure to hit submit to commit those changes and move on to the next. Note that in here there's also report level security. What this means is that a security role can be set up so that way only specific reports can be viewed by a user. These can be controlled by checking checkboxes here on the far left and adding them from the available reports list to the locked out reports list. You can do the opposite by freeing a report through checking the checkbox and hitting remove to remove it from the locked out list. Save and close, submit, and your changes are locked. After you've made sure those are set up as you need, you can then go into the employees list. In here, you'll see a list of all of your currently active employees made visible through this active column check selection. Just like before, you can run search filters to tidy up your list and search for what you're looking for. You can search for your inactive employees by selecting under active the unchecked feature. And you can delete all of your search filter options by hitting the clear filters button here on the upper right. To create a new employee, you can hit the green new employee button. This will bring you to your employee profile where you can begin filling out the information about your employee in question. Notably, you'll want to set up a first and last name. You want to set up initials, as many areas of our system, such as sales rep reports and customer list information, we'll look at CSRs and sales reps by initial rather than by their full name. So we want to make sure that you have both sets populated. The department and shift boxes here are based on what we had selected in the department and shift sublist. Note that if you try to save your save your employee without one of these, then you'll have a warning message preventing you from saving. In here, of note, you can also fill out a work email. This is an email that if a user attempts to send emails out of midnight through, or you're attempting to send emails to, this is the one that will be referenced. The other areas in here, such as the home and business address info, personal phone numbers, etc., they're largely unused. Note that the mobile phone and personal email, though, are used for one of our job costing widgets, which you can use to contact your employees if they are, say, not in the office or in need of an emergency contact. Under the roles list, you'll see a list of 5 options. These checkboxes determine where in Midnight this particular employee will appear. For instance, if you have a sales rep and you separate your sales reps from your CSRs, you may want to check and uncheck the appropriate boxes. If you're an accountant, you may want them to have access to everything, and you may want your sales reps or maybe your warehouse and floor team to only have access to their respective module, as well as only be available for selection through elements of the system that reflect their current area. The dashboard is the customizable list of widgets that can be assigned to your employees. There's roughly 30 of them in here. You can add them just like we saw in the reports list by checking the checkbox of the one or many that you'd like to add. And then checking the add button here to commit them, adding them to your selected widgets list. Noting that there is a blank widget if you want to add a space. Widgets appear on the home screen in the upper section, kind of like where you see our table area right here. The widgets themselves will have the first in the upper left corner, the second in the upper right, third, fourth, and so on. And note that if necessary, you can opt to have every single widget available. So do note you may need to rearrange them, and it may cause a little bit of performance lag on your homepage if you have too many widgets running right when you attempt to log in. Additionally, some of these widgets relate to sales information and such, and you may not want that info to be visible for all users, rather only a select few. The Quick Links report button allows you to select one specific report that can be made available through the production report button quick link found within this Quick Links tab. This can be customized per employee, so you can have a different type of production report available depending on the employee that you want to have them see. The Job Tracking tab relates to the job costing information for an employee. The wage rate is utilized for the employee's cost or expense to you. The kiosk control here on the far right accounts for the login for our shop floor data collection app. And I'll be covering these in more detail during our job costing training. Lastly, under the user login and permissions tab, you can set up a username and password for your employee. In doing so, you'll likely want to have the send email checkbox checked, so that way, once you hit save and close, the employee's business email from their employee homepage will be used as the account that receives the email letting them know that they have a password to log into your particular site. The security roles that we see at the bottom match what we have in our security admin menus list, and you can assign one accordingly. The limit features that we see here for these 3 checkboxes allow you to make it so that way if an employee is, say, a sales rep, then they can only see their customers, their estimates, or their orders. The locked out checkbox will check itself if a user has attempted to log in 5 times with improper credentials. This is a security feature to prevent users from forcing their way into other user accounts. Finally, if an employee's been created, you can reset their password by entering the pre-existing employee's account and selecting the Reset Password button here. Alternatively, you can deactivate the employee if they say quit or have been laid off by clicking this Deactivate button. This will prevent their username from allowing them to log in for midnight, so that way you don't have to worry about them trying to get into your data after they may have left your organization. When creating a new employee, do be sure to set up a username and hit Save and Close after checking the Send Email box, so that way they receive an email letting them know, 1, what your website is, and 2, what their username is. The user can assign themselves a password, but do note that the password does have to have at least one non-alphanumeric character and be 6 or more characters in line. There's a few other areas of the admin menu that we'll take a look at, which don't necessarily pertain to one other specific module of the system. One of those is under the estimate/orders list, in which you'll set up your tax codes. Depending on what state you live in, you'll have different tax logic to adhere to. Users in states like Texas only have one tax code to worry about. This is something that can be exported outwards into an accounting system, but it doesn't have to be any different based on the location in which you live. Other states like Florida will have many different tax codes based on their county, based on their state, and sometimes even beyond that. In this screen is where you plug in all of your tax codes as well as their accounting information from the GLID and INV item columns. If your postage is taxed as well as services, which is something we find for many users that are not from the United States, you may need to have the postage check box checked. Usually the code here is what will be pushed out into your accounting system. Do make sure that matches up. If you've created your tax codes, you need to create a tax jurisdiction to group them into. These can be created much like the shifts in which you select either add or your tax jurisdiction of choice. Add in your various codes if necessary, hitting save to commit, and making sure that the name of your jurisdiction is easy to recognize. If you happen to reside in a state like California or Florida, where you have a lot of different tax codes to assign to your many different customers, what you'll want to do is make sure that the name is something that identifies itself by, say, either state plus county or maybe further beyond. One last thing is that if you have a tax exempt order, you'll need to actually have a jurisdiction called exempt. That's necessary if you're running jobs that you plan to import into QuickBooks. Accounting programs tend to not have an easy way to identify a non-taxable job versus a tax-exempt job. Just be aware that that's where you plug in a jurisdiction of exempt with just a $0 tax code, so that way no taxes are actually applied. That pretty much covers everything for the admin setup. We can look at some of the other areas of the admin menu here, such as our accounting list, estimate and order, disposition status list, print menus, and standard services. But do know that the majority of these are covered in their respective training sessions. They'll largely be of little consequence to other areas of the system unless they're very obviously named in order to refer to them. The final thing to cover is that if you notice here in the upper right, there are several different icons. This version, release notes and facts button will always exist up here. If you check into this, you can see what updates include and a breakdown of how they work. You can also log out of your username by hitting the red button up here for your log out, and you can change your profile for your particular account after you've logged in by modifying your password if necessary, applying a profile picture for yourself, which only appears in this screen, or at least on the top of the website in general while you're logged in. And if you'd like to, you can set up a personal email signature instead of the default one from the global settings. Knowing, again, in that both areas, images cannot be imported. That covers everything for today's midnight training on the admin setup. Again, do note that this training session did not go over a ton of specific features. We do have many other areas of training that will cover how to populate their respective drop-down lists, such as postage, drop-downs and estimate, service drop-downs and estimates and orders, item types in inventory records, etc. With that said, thank you for attending. If you have any questions, concerns, or features that you'd like to discuss be added into Midnight, reach out to us at support@printreach.com. Alternatively, you can call us at 425-828-9495 extension 2.